would you take the vaccine? I've been asked this question many times. There is no the vaccine. That's like saying the pill. By February, there will be 4 vaccines approved in the United States. Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca. They're all different. They all have different safety and efficacy, and they use 2 different mechanisms of action. One's mRNA, one's recombinant viral vectors. The one that I think is the safest and is going to have the least side effects based upon the data I've seen is the Novavax vaccine, which is coming out. They've just started their phase 3 clinical trial in the US. It's not clear to me if they can use their clinical trial in the UK to apply for emergency use authorization. If they can, it'll come in February. If they can't, it'll come in April to May. Now, that vaccine is just protein and an adjuvant. That's it. There's no genetic material, no cell interaction. It's basically they take moth cells, they use it to make the spike protein, they scoop them all up, they put them in nanoparticles, and then they inject that into your body. It's a foreign agent. Your body's immune system says, whoa, we got to do something here, and it creates an immune response. I firmly believe that that's probably going to be the safest bet. There's ample evidence of that from HPV vaccine to other things that have done this in the past. I think the hepatitis B vaccine as well, that it works very well. So that's the one I'm going to get if it's effective. And of course, we'll have safety data and so forth. I don't think anything's wrong with the mRNA vaccines. I think they're quite safe. I think they would never be approved in a commercial setting outside of emergency use authorization because the side effect profile is too high. 80% of the people who get them, they have some reaction, like really painful arm, fever, chills. One person in the Pfizer trial, they shivered so bad their tooth cracked. That's not exactly consumer-friendly, no more tears shampoo type of vaccination. The dosage is probably too high. The formula probably needs to be rejiggered a bit. Maybe they should go from 2 to 3 shots. Who the fuck knows? If you were talking about normal consumer medicine, no one would take it if they have so much pain. And we've seen a lot of people have problems with that. Now, does it kill you? No. Does it create permanent damage? No. It's just super uncomfortable for a day or two, if that. And that's okay to be super uncomfortable for a day or two to recover or be immune to a disease that has a 0.3% chance of killing you, to be immune to a disease that can permanently strip you of your taste or cause myocarditis or vasculitis or brain problems or permanent damage to your lungs. My brother's a doctor up in Wyoming, and he has a whole ICU full of patients who have coronavirus right now, some of which are in their 20s and 30s. It's not just all old people. And even when these patients recover, some of them have permanent disabilities as a consequence of being infected with this, including being on oxygen, chronic fatigue, where they're so tired they have a hard time taking a shower. To say that I feel bad for a day or two to be immune to the potential of that, I mean, flip it. Would you take a vaccine that had a 0.3% chance of death and a higher chance of permanent disability? No. So then why are you volunteering to take that vaccine from infection by not taking the vaccine? So I say you have 2 choices in the vaccine, either nature's vaccine or man's vaccine. And nature's vaccine, you know what the side effect profile is of that. And you can pretend like it doesn't exist. There's a lot of full ICUs and a lot of people recovering, millions of them, who profoundly disagree with your assessment. It's real. It certainly has happened. I know people who have died from this, okay? It's not the end-all, be-all. I mean, there's certainly horrible diseases. I remember traveling throughout Africa. I happened to be in a country during an Ebola outbreak, and I had to quarantine in that country for a while because they wouldn't let me out of the country. The Ebola camps that they had, the mortality rate was 60%. 60%. 6 people out of 10 would die. The 4 who recovered, almost all of them had permanent disabilities in some way or another, severe disabilities in some way or another from recovering. Really terrible. And what was so horrible about it was that one family member would go, but you kind of knew the other family members were probably infected, so they would show up a day or 2 later, and you just watch them die one after another. The mother dies on Tuesday, the husband dies on Thursday, 2 of the 3 kids die by Saturday. And you just knew that that was going to happen all the way through. Horrible, horrible disease. Coronavirus is not Ebola. Okay? So the problem with our media is it convinced the world the coronavirus was Ebola. And then when it turned out that wasn't true, it became like the parent who told you, don't do drugs, because if you do drugs, your life is destroyed. You do the drugs and your life isn't destroyed, so your parent loses credibility. So then you start believing that drugs are completely safe and totally safe, and there's no problems at all with them. And of course, you Google Florida man, and you'll find out that those are problems, right? How many potheads do you know? Yeah, marijuana's not too bad, but God, if you smoke it every day, you're a fucking loser more often than not. You have no motivation. You're not doing anything. You're not in a high-functioning part of society because you're always just stoned, and nobody wants to work with a stoner. Come on, we all know these people. They're dredges, and it's something you do in your 20s and hope to God you get out of it by your 30s. So when your parents say don't do drugs, they were kind of really telling you don't become that person, but maybe they lied and said, oh, well, it's Ebola. It's so bad it'll kill you. And that's what the media did. They lied about coronavirus. They said coronavirus is the Spanish flu. Coronavirus is the apocalypse. It will kill you. 5% of the time, you're going to drop dead. And even if you don't drop dead, everything's horrible. Instead, what they should have been is intellectually honest and said, if you fall into these particular groups, you're going to have a really hard time. Now, if you're outside of those particular groups, you still could have a hard time, but you'll probably be okay. But do recognize that if you get it, you are a weapon and you're going to be spreading it to the people who are vulnerable. So until we figure out how to take care of these vulnerable people, it's probably prudent that we as a society scale back a bit and be much more reasonable about things. That's a moderate message that could have been pushed. Instead, they lied. They said, if you are a kid who's 12 years old, you are going to die if you get coronavirus at the same rate than if you're a 78-year-old man with congestive heart failure and severe diabetes and 400 pounds. Come on. There's no equivalent. Less than 100 children under the age of 14 have died of coronavirus. Almost all of them were immunocompromised or had congenital disorders or other such things. It doesn't kill kids. Stop lying to people. Okay? Why are the schools closed? Not because we're worried about the kids, because we want to protect teachers. Stop lying to people. The media lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. So people who are sick of the lies, myself included, they start just thinking, oh, fuck everything, right? But the real thing should be nature's vaccine, man's vaccine, side effect profile of nature's vaccine, side effect profile of man's vaccine. And you compare and contrast the two, there's no equivalency there. Whatever we're injecting into people, it is so much safer than what coronavirus will do. You probably could inject horse urine into people, and that'd be safer than what coronavirus does to people. It's a horrible disease. Influenza is a horrible disease. And 330,000 people have died of this. We can argue about those numbers, but let's be clear here. A factor of 3 to 4 more have recovered with permanent disabilities. If you walked in 2019 and told me that 1.2 million Americans are suddenly going to be afflicted with something that permanently disables them, is that a problem? More than all the people who have died in World War I and World War II in U.S. casualties, having a permanent disability. I said, that's a tragedy. It's a national tragedy of a scale that is unimaginable. And that's what just happened. If we had a vaccine, none of that would happen. Almost all of them would have not had a serious case. So are you telling me that these vaccinations are so damning and horrible and terrible that somehow is going to be worse than the rest of what has already occurred? Come on, be intellectually honest. And don't fucking Dunning-Kruger your way out of this and be so self-assured and just know. It's all a hoax. It's all a scam. Is there a power dynamic? Oh, yeah, of course. The government take advantage of people to gain power and belittle us and bully us? Of course. Do mass work? Maybe, maybe not. Hard to say. Depends on the context, how they're working. Yeah, it's nuanced. I agree with you. But don't for a fucking moment believe that somehow man's vaccine is worse than what nature is giving us right now. It's terrible what nature is giving us right now. It's a national catastrophe, and it's going to hurt, and it's already devastated and hurt a lot of people. Scientists found a way to get us out of this. And government incompetence, propaganda, and bad media has exacerbated a problem that could have been resolved. Should we have done lockdowns? No. They were terrible ideas. They made no sense. Who had the solution? Taiwan. They studied it for 17 years after the first coronavirus, and they had a war map like no other country. 7 people died in Taiwan of coronavirus. 7 of a country of 20 million people. Hyper urbanized. Everybody's living on top of each other, taking mass transit. 7. Think about that. So could we have done better? Yeah. And we should have. And the real response to all of this is, let's get out of it and let's burn down every institution that fucked us. The rampant corruption in Operation Warp Speed, their incompetence where they had 9 months to figure out how to distribute vaccines. They can't even vaccinate more than 200,000 people a day. The funding behind who got money and who didn't get money with Operation Warp Speed for vaccine deployment. The fact that these companies were left to their own devices to structure the phase 3 clinical trials. Why did none of these include sterilizing immunity trials in tandem with the vaccination? What does that mean? It proves that the vaccines prevent transmission. Why would that be useful? Because it would end the quarantines. It would end the social distancing. It would end the mask wearing because you can't spread it after you've got. We could have proven that. Was that baked into the clinical trials? No. Why? I don't know. You fucking tell me. I'm angry as hell over how much bad stuff has happened throughout all of this, but I'm not going to be part of the problem. I'm going to get vaccinated, of course. Why not? It's not going to harm me. I'm fine. You know, I'd have a better chance of developing a problem from all of the lifestyle things I've done throughout my life and the bizarre diseases I've contracted from Lassa fever on other such things throughout my life than anything that these guys are injecting into me. My brother and dad have already been vaccinated. They're fine. Okay? It's okay. It's not going to create a problem here. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. And part of the solution is hold every politician who fucked us accountable, demand economic analysis of the lockdowns and what's they're proven to be non-effective, fire every single person who's responsible for it, get restitution, a class action lawsuit against the government in some way for the businesses that were destroyed and the lives that were destroyed as a direct consequence of poor policy, make a massive investigation into how the government conducted itself from contact tracing to supply chains to PPE to the vaccines, go through the whole gamut and demand a unified national strategy for the next pandemic. And if they can't come to one, then have the private industry create one and fund them for it. For about $20 billion, we can pre-make vaccines to the phase 2 clinical trial level for every single disease that could cause a pandemic. And within 4 months, we can have a vaccine in market. Had we had that proactively for coronavirus, we would have a vaccine in May. And if we could mass manufacture it, every American could have been vaccinated by the end of the year. And corona would be gone. We'd have maybe 50,000 people dead instead of 350,000 people. There are solutions to this. These solutions will not get implemented if we as the citizenry do nothing. We must demand it and hold people accountable. Some people need to go to jail. Some people need to have their reputations destroyed. Some people need to have their money taken away from them that they have through ill-gotten gains. I would love to see if there's insider trading with Novavax and Moderna in particular. Why did a company with 375 employees on the edge of bankruptcy that had never deployed a product to market since 1987 when they were founded somehow get a contract for 1.6 billion doses? When you look at all the different government contracts and billions of dollars of subsidies and funding through Operation Warp Speed. If you actually believe that that company was capable of doing that, there's too much risk in a small-scale organization being entrusted with that kind of capital. Why did the Defense Production Act not be used to take over the company and nationalize the vaccine and open source it? Why not? Same for Moderna. Never brought a product to market. Why not use the Defense Production Act to take them over? Why didn't that happen? Moncef Slaoui, the vaccine czar, used to be on the board of Moderna before he became the vaccine czar. I guarantee you, look at the stock price of Novavax and how it went way up. There's some sort of connection between the policymakers and that particular company. It sickens me. And that must be investigated. Absolutely must be investigated. And we must be relentless, as doggedly relentless as possible, because here's what's going to happen. 4 vaccines are going to be on market by February. They're all probably going to be above 90% effectiveness. By May, we'll have at least 5, just US. And then there's the global vaccines. Those 5 alone can vaccinate enough people that by June, this is no longer a pandemic for the United States. Okay, it's over. Social distancing is over. Mask wearing is over. Some states will have it because they have fucking control freak governors and so forth. And here's what the government's going to do. God, that was terrible. We're so glad we're through it. Okay, bye everybody. Everything's okay. And try to sweep it all under the rug and pretend like it never happened and business as usual and move on. It's only going to be a problem if we make it a problem. So in 2021, that's our duty as people to get involved. So get vaccinated. Yes, they're safe. And let's get out of the immediate crisis and end this before 1 million people die of it. And we have 5 million people with permanent disabilities. And then let's hold an inquisition and burn the people down who are responsible for getting it to a point that 1 million people died, getting it to a point that millions of people have disabilities when other countries had 7 people die.